Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind radio.
Pick it up next week. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this day and for the next 2 hours as we cover all things eclectic and esoteric and speaking about the Matrix and our being indoctrinated, assimilated, and controlled by it. And I was just talking to Fritz about how all of us have to have a foot in both worlds, and even though we try to keep a priority and a focus for the kingdom, we still have to maintain and make money and be part of the whole endeavor of surviving within the materialistic economy and the global driven system, which has all that supply and demand and all of that kind of stuff. And so I want to initially go ahead and just remind everybody that if you can, we would appreciate, the network would appreciate your monetary support, and that's what gives us the ability to be listener supported, corporate and commercial free, and we're the largest network, truth platform found in the internet and in the world. And in order for us to be able to continue doing so, we do need your support. And I have as guests with me this evening both Fritz Springmeier and Dolores Ann Lundberg, and they're calling in from West Coast Oregon area, Portland, I believe. And I thank both of you for taking the time to join us. It's been a little while, but finally are privileged to have you back on. And Fritz, are you there?
Yes, it's great to be invited to be back. Thank you, Zen.
Yeah, well, I consider it such an honor to have both you and Dolores on. Dolores, are you there as well, sister?
Yes, welcome. Praise the Lord, and thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank Nighthawk for this venue, his very diligent hard work, and I want to thank you for being a righteous foot washer and a humble servant of the Lord and a watcher on the wall, ringing the bell every day and walking the walk and talking the talk in a real kind of way. And we're here tonight just to bring some reality, some walking with the Lord, and some empowering each and every one of your listeners to be armed with the only power that's going to take us through the next little bit of time. So with that, I'll let Fritz take over.
Amen. Well, thank you. And likewise, I appreciate both of your examples and doing, not just saying, but doing and being the example as we are all called to be. So Fritz, I know that you've written many books, and I want to give you a chance initially to just list those as well as your website, and if you want Facebook or any contact information, and then we'll get into the dialogue.
Okay, well, yeah, as you probably have been noticing, that most of the time, if I can find the time to do it, I will write an article a day and put it on Facebook. And I try to have very hard-hitting articles that are providing information that people are not going to find anywhere else. If people are interested in getting my books, the ones that are still in print can be gotten at my website, pentracks.com, pentracks.com, pentracks.com. And I wrote a series of books on the Illuminati, a 7-book series, the who, what, how, and when of the subject. And I continue to do research, but the books were done because I felt called by God to write these books. And so what continues to be a priority for me is to keep myself open to whatever God calls me to do. And a lot of these articles that I write, that I post, are things that God has given me. They're messages that God's given me. Some of them are just research, but then for those of you who are Christians, sometimes the Holy Spirit lays something on my heart, and I pass that on as best as I can.
Well, Fritz, why don't you tell us about, maybe 2 or 3 articles that you've recently written, just to give the audience kind of a general what's up of what you are focused on and what you've been writing about?
Right. Well, today I gave a spiritual message. It was training for Christians, the virtue of using your spiritual armor. And the reason I did that was because Christians are just not appreciating the value of their spiritual armor, and they're just walking off and operating without it. And so I go in to explain the value of the helmet of salvation, the shield of faith, your sandals of peace, why it's important to have peace in our life. Like Satan's into chaos, God's into peace. If you really want to move forward in your Christian walk, you have to reject chaos and you need to find God's peace, which includes, being able to forgive other people. Because if we can't forgive, we get locked at that point, or if we get traumatized, we can get locked in that point and not move forward. And Satan's always trying to traumatize us and attack us and hurt us so that we become wounded casualties, And so that's something that we can talk some about later on in the show, is trying to get Christians to move forward, because we're going to go through some hard times here in the future. And so I've been giving a number of messages to help Christians move through that. Another recent article that I wrote was about the current Bilderberg meeting that they just had. They had this, it just ended on the 14th of June. Of course, they have a few days where afterwards where a few of them get together on one, in small meetings.
You there, Fritz? It seems that we've lost you as far as volume. Yeah, okay, so we'll see if he's able to regain his connection. If not, then I'll call him back. Yeah, there's a problem with the call, so it's trying to work itself out. And in the meantime, well, I'm interested to see, where the Bilderberg meeting was and what had occurred as far as the agenda, because those are always very insightful. And for those that don't know what the Bilderberg meetings are, or what they're, as far as the agenda that they set there, it's the name that was given to these meetings that occur every year between the royals, the elitists, the transnationalists, the globalists. I'm going to try to bring Fritz back on here 1 second. But anyways, it's the meeting that the global elite have to determine what would be agenda for the next year, and they set up their long-term goals for what they want to where they want to take and how they want to drive as far as problem, reaction, solution, the world in their quest to bring on the New World Order. For some reason, we're not able to contact him. Very strange. But anyways, I'll give it a few moments and I'll try again. It's always intriguing that this kind of stuff happens with Fritz because he's such a very eloquent speaker and very wise on the New World Order and what's up with them and where they're trying to take us. So we'll give it just a few minutes and then I'll try again. Dolores, if you're listening in, just let him know that I will try to give him a call. In the meantime, I'll give a real quick shout out to all those that I immediately see within the scroll of chat. Gergs, Tremar, Zoner, Watcher Ruth, Doc Who, Hal, Wolfman, and Zippy, Link, Jerbear, Monkey. I know that Mr. Rowe is also there, and the rest of you that are not in the immediate scroll, there's quite a number of people in the chat room. Yeah, quite a number that I see. Estimation 60, 70 or so. But anyways, so I'll try again. Fritz, you there, brother?
Yes. Yes. Did we reconnect then?
Yeah, it did reconnect.
Okay.
Not sure as to what had happened, but the last that we were able to hear of you, you were talking about the Bilderberg meeting, and I was just wondering where that was and also what was the agenda that was set during that gathering. Okay,
well, this was the 63rd time that they've had a Bilderberg meeting, and it was in Telsbuchen, Austria, which is a resort place in the Tyrol Alps. And there were quite a few things that they had on their agenda, but I think what is noteworthy about it is that they were discussing the U.S. elections, and the Illuminati's candidate for the elections is Hillary Clinton. She's a grand dame, and most likely she will succeed. I've noticed that she recently was sending out mail to people, we're in this together and everything. It was well done. She's got the best help for her to strategize how to win, and it doesn't seem like anybody else is really going to be able to compete with her. But anyway, another thing that they were discussing was NATO and Russia and European strategy. And this is important because we are working towards a possible world war. Things could heat up, and there's a lot of interconnections between different countries. So let's say Pakistan and India got into a war. Well, it would probably drag other countries in, just like World War I started between two small European countries, but drug the rest of the world in. And World War II also started with some isolated conflicts that then went worldwide eventually. So that was something that they were discussing, and something that definitely pertains to all of us, because NATO is part of the military-industrial complex, and one of the things that NATO does in secret is they are a platform for weapon sales for the military-industrial complex. And Russia's been revamping their military-industrial complex because Putin in 2000 he was saying, well, our military-industrial complex here in Russia is archaic. We need to reestablish it, rebuild it, and they have been. So 6 of Russia's companies are listed in the 100 leading global weapons producers, and they've actually come out with some really powerful weapons in recent times. They've got the KAB 500 KR smart bomb, which is considered the best in the world, and they've developed a supersonic anti-tank missile, and it's called the Vickers. It's capable of going through 1,000 millimeters. That's a meter. A meter of modern armor on a tank can be pierced by the supersonic anti-tank missile. It's pretty incredible. We've got quite a few other things that are being kept secret, though. I mean, those are the type of upgrades that they're selling. But the best weapons that the Russians and the Chinese have are secret, so they don't sell those to other countries.
Right.
So yeah, so we're definitely moving into a period of time where a lot of things could kick off. You know, if we do get into a war, and knowing about the Illuminati timetable and their agenda, they do have another world war planned. And then right on following that will be these pandemics, these super plagues. And, so you have the war, then you have famines, then you have the plagues, and then they can all be considered like, plagues can be at that point, people call them acts of God when they're not acts of God, but at any rate, they look like they naturally occurred, even though they're part of a script.
Right. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Can you speak on, since we're talking about this, really quick on the rumors that Putin has died, and also the correspondence between Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini talking about the need to foment 3 global wars in order to, to create the United Nations, but just that third part about the controlled opposition between the Christian world and the Muslim world?
Sure. Albert Pike was the grand poobah, the grand pope of Freemasonry, and Giuseppe Mazzini, he's very famous in Italy and Europe, but Americans don't know much about him. He was Illuminati, and he created all kinds of organizations, revolutions. The man was very busy, and he and Albert Pike were both into Freemasonry and into Luciferianism. And there was correspondence, and this correspondence was actually in a museum at one point. It was actually on display. But Albert Pike did indeed write a letter like you're talking about, where he said that, the leadership needed to create 3 world wars. Well, we've already experienced 2 of those. So we haven't experienced the third one. The third one was postponed. It was set originally to have already happened by this time, and for various reasons, the timetable got changed. It's been put on hold, but we certainly have a lot of low-key conflicts around the world that could easily spin out of control and become a pretext for another world war. And just this thing in Ukraine is a
Right.
dangerous thing. As our listeners probably know, we now have Americans military there in the Ukraine. Russia's secretly been putting in people into the Ukraine, and the Illuminati sent their academy mercenaries over there. So we've got a lot of things that are a lot of foreign, NATO and so forth going into the area. And here in the United States, what we're dealing with is this jade helm coming up. And some of your listeners, I'm sure, are aware of jade helm and the official meaning for jade helm, as some of you probably know, joint assistant for deployment and execution. But jade represents China and helm control. So in some way, this is related to either control of China or China controlling things. China has of any country, they have more of America's debt, like treasury bills, than any other country. And at some point, they're going to try to get their debt out of this country. And something that relates to all of this is the IMF, International Monetary Fund. It's controlled by Christine Lagarde. She's an Illuminati member. She sits on a 7-member board of directors that's right up there at the top. And so Christine Lagarde's a heavyweight in the Illuminati. Her right-hand man is from China, and he's been going around telling people this year that China is going to be given world reserve currency status, and on their calendar, that the time period that they have marked off that would be for announcing that would be the third week of October. So we could possibly see that happen. Now, they were considering doing something like this a few years ago, and then they changed their mind because they didn't feel China's economy was ready to become to have a world reserve currency status. The United States has the preeminent position there, but we've been slowly falling off of that position. Here in the last year, only 62% of the time, I think, is what the percentage was of the time when there's been these large financial transactions, have they used U.S. dollars in the transaction. So they've already started shifting. But if they officially shift, it means that United States dollar is going to lose a lot of value. There's going to be maybe, significant inflation, and life is going to be pretty rough. And so if those kind of things happen, then what they're practicing for in Jade Helm will have significance. Now, I don't think that they're actually going to bring in martial law when they do this large exercise. And for the listeners that aren't aware, Jade Helm is going to be using our super soldiers. They're going to have a few areas like Texas that are considered hostile countries, and they're going to be practicing these military operations in the three biggest states, which are California, Texas, and Florida. But they're also going to be doing these exercises in the southwest United States, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, as well as Mississippi. Now, they're going to be sneaking around, driving civilian vehicles, wearing civilian clothes. they're going to be trying to move around without civilians being able to detect them. And there was like a precursor to all of this in Fort Lauderdale back in March 28th, where the military there practiced arresting people. And then after they arrested civilians, they moved these civilian detainees to imprisonment. So these drills that they are doing with these super soldiers, using like Delta Force and the Air Force and Marine super soldiers and snipers and so forth. This is realistic training. They call it realistic training, but it's realistic training only for, obviously, an American martial law situation. What they're going to be doing and what they're training on would have no bearing for realistic training in Afghanistan or Somalia or someplace like that, So this training that they're doing, I think, is to desensitize us to them doing these large-scale operations, military operations, martial law operations here in the United States. So if they do have to do a martial law situation, we're not going to be reacting to it because we're going to be desensitized. I also, going back to your earlier question, what kind of articles have I been writing? I wrote an article about the spiritual dimensions to Jade Helm because one of the things that we're involved with is a jurisdictional battle with Lucifer, because God placed certain parameters on what Lucifer could do, and you can see that.
Fritz. We're at break. Hold on to that thought, and we'll pick it up in just a few minutes. Be right back, Al. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and I have as guests with me Fritz Springmeier and Dolores Ann Lundberg. Fritz, we do have a few questions from the chat room, but I'm going to let you finish up your. You were talking about the spiritual aspect of this war with Lucifer, and then I'll ask these questions to you.
Well, yeah, going back to where we were at before we took a break, I was talking about the spiritual dimensions of Jade Helm 15. What they have done is the military sent out messages, letters, to all kinds of local officials, county officials, county police, mayors, whatnot, all through all these various states. And they asked them if they would request for the military to come into their area. Now, what is this doing? It means that all these officials that are supposed to be taking care of us, that they have come into agreement with this whole thing, with this whole martial law exercise. Now, this is a good example of what Satan has been doing for a long time, and that is God places parameters on Lucifer, and then his principalities and powers, they come along and they use symbols to communicate and also to gain our agreement. They want us to agree. It's like the revelation of the method. They want us somehow, our will, to come into agreement with what they want to do. And it gives them the right to come in and do it. A lot of people, those that maybe are savvy, that have actually come to realize the spiritual dimensions of demons, evil spirits, when we have a particular thought, we open up portals that allow these spirits to come in. So let's say I have some thoughts of murder, or let's say thoughts of drinking. Well, as I open up that portal and the spirit of of drinking comes in, drunkenness, it will lock me into that vice. That's why it's so hard for people that get caught up in these vices to break free, because the addiction is more than just a physical addiction. There's a spiritual element to it too. And very few people realize how they need to be delivered, how they need to renounce these things and cast them out of their lives and clean themselves up. But most people have been dirty spiritually their entire lives. They don't even realize they are dirty. You know, it's like somebody who's never taken a bath their entire life. How are they going to know that they didn't take a bath yesterday? Because they've never had one anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So this Jade Helm thing of where they're going in and getting all of these local officials in like 15 states to agree to what they're going to do. There's, you know, behind the U.S. military doing this Jade Helm is the world system. This has more going on to it than just a simple military exercise. In fact, we already know that all these alphabet agencies like NSA, CIA, DEA, they're all going to be participating with this Jade Helm 15. So it's a lot bigger thing than what people realize. And they're going to be watching everybody, totally, everybody in those states. They're going to be watching 100% of the civilians to see how they react and see how well they can track them. So this thing has some really, I'm going to use the word dangerous. You know, I'm not trying to scare people, but we need to realize that increasingly we're going into a time period where we have, battles that have a spiritual dimension to them. And a lot of things are being done to manipulate our thinking and our spirituality. You've been exposing how there's how the fallen angels came down. Well, in this area that Jade Helm is being conducted, we have Sandia National Lab, we have Los Alamos National Lab, we've got White Sands. These are all connected by tunnels, by the way. And we've got some other places there. We've got Dulce, which I went and investigated in 1993. And in Dulce, my eyewitnesses that have talked to me talk about how they're doing genetic experiments in creating transhumans. So they've created strange creatures. And just one wonders, when are they going to release these strange creatures that they're creating? They are now taking DNA, and just like you write a computer program from scratch, they are now assembling DNA as if it were a computer program that they can just write from scratch. So what kind of creatures are they dreaming up and creating from scratch? Because they're playing God. They don't think that God assembled DNA good enough, that they need to manufacture whatever their little imaginations dream up. So that's what we've got going on in the very area that they're going to be doing this large multi-state Jade Helm exercise. So, and on the flip side of it, they're busy altering and destroying our DNA. A lot of people realize that we're being chemtrailed. And if anybody doubts that they're chemtrailing us, I just suggest that they go on YouTube and you'll find actual planes that have come up behind the planes that are chemtrailing and have videotaped these planes spraying. These are not contrails, these are chemtrails, and it's been well enough documented that people can discover the truth for themselves. But one of the things that they're putting into the chemtrails is programmable material that when it gets into your body, they're going to be able to track you and program you. So we're getting into some really nasty high-tech stuff. But I encourage people to know exactly what they believe, because nobody can mess with your thinking if you know exactly what you believe. You know, if you're wishy-washy and don't, and somebody implants a foreign thought into your head, you might go with it. But if you are walking with the Lord, you know what you believe. Even if they try to mess with your mind, it's not going to work. You're going to go, well, that's a strange thought. That's not the way I think. You know, where'd that come from? Because, like, you know, and I've been documenting this since my 2 books on mind control that are still available. I have 2 large books out there on mind control. The one I call the formula book. It was the first large book I did. Its actual title is The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave. And its sequel, fortunately, doesn't have such a long title. Its sequel is just Deeper Insights. But in those books, one of the things that I go into is I discuss the deep underground military bases, what they're doing in the deep underground military bases. And I also started giving the actual numbers, the patent numbers for these devices that will implant thoughts into your head remotely. So they have already, you know, some of the listeners may already know that they used such a device back in the first Gulf War. They sculptured clouds with directed energy, and then they beamed the thoughts into the front line of Iraqi troops. This is a religious war, and you are on the wrong side of it. You know, as if Muhammad was telling them this. So, you know, they've already done this kind of stuff and practiced it. I bump into every now and then. I was just talking to someone the other day. I will talk to strangers, and he was talking to me about, you know, how his family had been, part of them had been murdered, how they were trying to beam thoughts into him and his family. And one time I felt called, you know, I try to listen to the Holy Spirit. I felt called to pick up this guy that was hitchhiking out in the country. And he told me how he was on the run because they were trying to beam thoughts into his head to turn him into a drug dealer, and he didn't want to be. So anyway, if we know what we believe, we're going to be much less available to be tampered with. We might even be tamper-proof. Certainly, we need to understand that God is going to be there for us, and we're called to keep our minds on Him, which will allow us to remain in perfect peace. And one of our weapons, spiritual weapons, is faith, trusting, confidence in His goodness. You know, we're told to cast all of our cares upon Him. One of the things that I mentioned to Dolores that I did want to talk about, one of the lessons that I had learned a number of years ago that was so valuable was that we need to take a hold of our time. If we don't grab a hold of our time, it will grab a hold of us and just beat the heck out of us. The thing is most people are so busy, they are not really even thinking about what's going on. They're just going through the motions of life. They're so busy with their jobs and so forth. And Dolores was talking to me today about an article that I wrote a long time ago. I met a guy who had been in solitary for 8 years. That's a long time to be in solitary. But it hadn't broken him, but it had given him an appreciation for silence. And see, that's what we're lacking now, is we're all on this rat race that people aren't really asking themselves the questions that they need to ask. What's my life all about? They're not reflecting, they're not praying, they're not thinking, how can I improve my life? So I asked people, what does the music of your life sound like? If you were to sing the music of your life right now, what would it sound like? And because people aren't examining their lives. That old saying, the unexamined life is not worth living. And we're told in Proverbs, it says, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. That's so true. We need to sit down and say, what is going on? What's important? What is really important? And how am I going to deal with all these things that are coming down the pike? What happens if the economy melts down? What happens if the U.S. economy melts down and there's a global meltdown? What happens if we're dragged into a war, that we have famines, we have riots? How am I going to deal with these things? Am I spiritually in tune where I can glorify God? None of us who are walking with the Lord have meaningless lives. At the very least, your life is glorifying God. So don't believe the lie of the enemy that you're worthless or you're no good. That's the world's constantly sending us these messages to degrade us. For instance, fear. And then our fears become self-fulfilling prophecies. We need to realize that God is not calling us to a spirit of fear. And how do we have the courage that he calls us to? Oh, is there somebody wanting to know about World War III?
Well,
Okay,
yeah, let me
Dolores.
ask you a couple questions, but I want to make this comment real quick. Um, this reminds me of people that go through near-death experiences and how profound the impact is on their lives, that when they come back, they immediately changed behaviors and then they prioritize their lives. They don't waste any more time. They get focused on goals and accomplishing what they feel they need to do if death should come upon them again, and if they need to make changes that would put them more in alignment with the Most High's will for our lives, and that would secure their eternal inheritance. And this is even for people that had largely been atheists or didn't believe in God, that when they have these kind of experiences, it really profoundly affects them. But the questions that I wanted to ask you, and which were also part of the chat room, was this is in connection with the Jade Helm and also with the debt. Just recently, I posted an article about how China was demanding land here in the United States as payment for their debt, and how the U.S. has already given them two of our deep water ports, one in California, the other one in the Bahamas, and how even they're taking over infrastructure. They now own NASDAQ. They're converting interstates into toll roads, things of that nature. Another question from the chat room was about Jade 1 and 2. I don't know what they were talking about. You might. And then the other thing was about the banks closing down, the bank vacation, to stop bank runs.
Okay. Yeah, what you mentioned about the China is very significant, and I want to reemphasize that because it should alarm the listeners if they're aware of what's happened. The two most important ports, naval facilities on the Pacific for the United States, the absolutely two most important, were Long Beach, because that was a deep water port for things like our nuclear aircraft carriers, and then the Panama Canal. And we have given both of those to the Red Chinese. The Red Chinese are running the Panama Canal, and granted, there's a project now underway to make another canal through Nicaragua, but that's going to be some time. And the Chinese are going to be helping build that, and will probably be running that one too. So you look at these major important facilities, and that the U.S. would turn them over to China is showing that our leadership is not protecting us from the Chinese. And then, like you say, they're giving the Chinese land. There's going to be more that's going to be given to the Chinese. And the Chinese have stockpiled in a number of underground facilities in Mexico, northern Mexico. They have bribed large numbers of Mexican officials from top to bottom to allow them to do this quietly. And they have stockpiled military equipment. So if there were riots in the United States, and the United Nations and NATO and who knows who else decides that they need to help the United States bring our streets under control, the Chinese already have their equipment pre-positioned in northern Mexico, so it won't be difficult for a large Chinese, let's say a 500,000 man army, to be moved to North America. Now, when we look at the banks, what you're talking about, bank vacations, if we look at the kind of things that have happened in Cyprus and Greece and so forth, where they bring in these controls, those things have been discussed, and we are very likely going to see capital controls placed on things. We could very well see a banking holiday. We could very well see some of the bubbles, the economic bubbles that are out there bursting, the derivatives market bursting.
Hold on, Fritz. We'll be right back, and we'll pick it up on the other side. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and I have as guests with me this evening Fritz Springmeier and Dolores Ann Lundberg. I do quickly want to remind everybody that we do have to pay the bills, and we need your monetary support in order to continue with the endeavor of bringing forth truth in the way that we do with all of the many hosts that we have coming broadcasting live 24/7 on both Studio A and Studio B. I forget exactly the number, but there's well over 40 to 80, depending on who's joining us and who's left, different hosts covering an eclectic array of topics and bringing forth and covering the most meaningful news stories and things that you should know about, which are not being talked about or discussed in many places at all. And a lot of people are controlled by corporatism or, from the top down and not even allowed to speak about certain things. So if you can, please do go to freedomslips.com and click on the donation button, or take advantage of the different things that we have offered, the non-GMO seed packs, a bullet drive with all of the many different resources, buy a coffee mug, t-shirt, anything of that nature. It all helps, and we appreciate you. Fritz, you were covering China and their demand for, property, and also their control of the United States, and how really the leaders of both countries are working in tangent to bring down the U.S. And also, if you would, in talking about the bank runs and everything, if you could also mention the vision of Dmitry Duduman and the invasion of America by the Russian and the Chinese, and if you know about it, the vision of George Washington, where he saw, the Lady Liberty stutter and almost fall, and how it was also comparable to the vision that Dmitry Duduman has seen as well.
You were doing a good job of describing it. I should let you continue describing it. Yeah. Prophecy Club had Dmitry Duduman on a number of times, and people can go, I believe that there's a YouTube video of him talking, so type in his name and Prophecy Club, and you can get a more in-depth view of his prophecies straight from the man's mouth himself. So yeah, like you're saying, our leaders are not loyal to the concept of America as America was created, and so we're facing the same kind of a situation that the German people were facing when their nation was taken over by the Nazis. And, you go a step by step, you lose more and more freedoms. We're no longer in a free nation. This is really now a police state. And you increasingly see the police becoming very brutal to people. And the thing is that concerns me is that people need to take responsibility for their own lives and their own thinking. And it amazes me, Zen, that people think that it's the doctor's job to take care of them. They will neglect their health. They will make bad choices consistently. And then when their health goes bad, then they blame the doctor. And for all the things that we've been talking about, financial meltdown, famines, plagues, all of these require us, if we're going to make it through them, to be healthy, So people need to start choosing to eat only that which is going to give them nourishment or prevent an illness. Our food can be our medicine, and people need to start learning how to get better sleep, how to have healthier social relations, how to love. God said it, and this is one of my all-time favorite verses in the Bible. He says, I have set before you life and death, therefore choose life. Everything we do, Zen, in life, everything is in some fashion a decision for life or a decision for death. And we should be making decisions for life. You know, your decision to be giving this program, you are trying to, that's a decision for life. You are trying to give life to people, you know, and trying to give them a reality-based life. And that's so important. We need a reality-based life where we come to realize what reality is, and then we responsibly apply our understanding, our realization of reality into our life. And this is something that's lacking. We're seeing people are afraid of reality. They're wanting to go read novels. They want to go to entertainment, video games, where they can step outside of reality. They want to take drugs or, well, actually alcohol is a form of drug. They want to take drugs to escape reality. And I would encourage people to learn how to face reality. I know there's a lot of unpleasant things in it, but if we're going to make it through, we need to come in, and we need to get in touch with what's happening so that we're not blindsided. You know, it's just like the Illuminati have this attitude that if people don't take care of their health, they deserve to die. And so, you know, Illuminati corporations like Monsanto, they're poisoning us. And they do things like sell Roundup, you know, which is an herbicide, which is they are putting out GMO crops that are affecting us genetically, and people are not even. I don't know how aware people are even of GMOs. You know, do they realize that the corn has been sabotaged? Do they realize that if they eat some, and corn is in almost everything, yet they're modifying the corn. They've changed the genetics of corn that's being raised in this country so that it sterilizes men and it neuters them. It destroys their sperm.
Right.
You know, it's sick. It's sick what they're doing. But they have the power. The media goes along with it because the media is controlled. These elite are the ones that own and are directors of the mass media. So, of course, the mass media is going to follow the wishes of the people that own and control it.
Can you talk a little bit about the connections with the forced vaccination as far as the martial law agenda and, you know, and also the stripping of posse comitatus, like during Hurricane Katrina, they were also practicing the confiscation of guns from American citizens, and they basically got rid of posse comitatus, had Blackwater on the streets, that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Katrina was a practice for what they were going to do later on in other places, exactly like what you're talking about. And somebody I knew who had family in New Orleans, his family was saying it's a lot worse than what you're seeing on the news, and that they were excited for the troops to come in. But when the troops came in, they were in a martial law mindset where they treated everybody as if they were the enemy. They didn't come in to rescue people. They came in and stuck guns in their ribs and pointed guns at them like they were the enemy. So, yeah, exactly like what you said, you know, posse comitatus being derailed, and just the whole framework of the way things are run, where instead of the people having a say in their government, that now it's a police state. And one of the things that we've been watching our current president do is when he wants to do something, he just does it. You know, he's not worried about what the Constitution says or even writing out executive orders. He just calls people up and says, do this, do that. He is no different than Benito Mussolini or Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. He's just running things however he wants. And this should waken up people that, you know, this is the situation we live in. And in Germany, a lot of the Christians went along with this. A lot of the good people would not stand up, but there were a few people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and some other good people that said, you know, this is wrong. This needs to be stood up against, and that's what they did. They provided moral leadership and said, you know, a good person can't go along with this. So there are a lot of things that are happening that a good person just can't go along with, and we need to take a stand. That not only allows us to look in the mirror and feel good about ourselves, but it's a good testimony for the next generation to come along. We can't expect the next generation to want to fight this if they don't see us stepping up to the plate and doing our part.
Right. Well, where do you see things headed, and also what can people do to kind of prepare themselves and their families? And especially those that don't have a lot of money, what kind of advice can you give to them?
Yeah, that's a definite problem that many of us face, is not having a lot of money. One of the things in that situation is to start paying attention to how your money is used, and finding out ways that you don't have to pay money. Now, this is just one example. I mean, I have had a garden. You know, Dolores has a big, beautiful garden, which I have had the privilege of helping with some. And when you grow your own crops, that's a decision for health. You know, I was talking about how God said, I've set before you life or death, choose life. Growing your own garden is a very positive step to follow that scripture, Deuteronomy 30:19, that I was quoting to you, you know, therefore choose life. Okay. You are not getting GMOs. You're not getting tainted food. You're not getting Monsanto's Roundup. You're getting something healthy that's going to give you life, and it's going to be more inexpensive, and it's going to be therapeutic. So people need to start considering what's in their water. You know, I try very hard not to drink the water that my city has, because it's chlorinated and it's nasty.
Fluoride?
Well, they haven't put fluoride in it yet.
No.
But if you let it, like when I first moved in here, and I would burn wood, and I would have a pot on the wood, on the top of the stove. Then when it boiled down, you would see this thick, nasty residue, which shows that the water has got a lot of silt and stuff in it. It's a lot. It's not pure water, that's for sure. So taking care, the first step is for people to recognize that they need to be responsible. They need to take responsibility for their lives. That should be common sense, but somehow the system has convinced a lot of people to think that some expert should be in control of your life instead of stepping up and learning yourself how to do it. Responsibility. Learn what is going on. You know, I was talking earlier about health, and there's so much disinformation that's been given to the public and is accepted by the public as the way to do things or as truth. And that's one of the reasons why we have such high cancer rates. It's another reason why 86% of the drugs globally that are produced are consumed by Americans. And yet we have, in terms of health, we're way down the list as far as health. There are many countries that are healthier than us, and they're not taking the massive amount of drugs that we are. Some of these drugs, like statins, are just dangerous. People need to start finding out the truth about these drugs that the doctors are giving them. These are all the kind of things, the lifestyle choices that people can make that are going to make a big difference. I look at how unhealthy Americans are, and it's not going to take a whole lot to destabilize them, because they have just allowed the system to just fill their minds up with a lot of false notions. You know, just because something looks good, it can be very attractive, so-called food, but it's really a poison, you know. I look at people, sometimes I just shake my head, because it's just, you know, I knew this one girl, all she lived on were Diet Cokes.
Yeah.
That's it. She didn't eat any food. It was just Diet Cokes all day long.
And those are so much worse for you than even the regular Cokes. But, you know, yeah, both of them are just terrible for your health. But
yes, and I see this kind of stuff happening all around. I saw the newspaper yesterday was saying that 1/3 of the women are overweight and another third are obese. In other words, for the first time in history, 2/3 of the women are overweight, and you've got more people that are overweight than have normal health, right, or normal weight. And why is this happening? It's because of the stuff that they're selling us, the prepared food, the processed food, the restaurant foods, all of this that people are consuming, and they need to start taking care of themselves, and because nobody else is going to care for your health like you will. Your health is like one of the foundational issues in all the issues that we've been talking about. You know, if your health isn't there, it makes it harder to be focused spiritually. And definitely we need to be spiritually healthy. Our spiritual health is part of our overall health. And so, you know, your body may have, a person's body may suffer from shortcomings, but if they bring their spiritual health up, that will compensate for it. And so anyway, that I think it's really important for people to to seek God, seek His face, seek His protection, learn to pray, learn to have some quiet time where they get in touch with what's happening in their life, so that they can examine their life, so they can take control of their life and not just be dragged around by events, because that's what's going to happen. These events that are coming up, and I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, because just like we were discussing earlier, they they had a third world war plan, but they have postponed it. And so I've seen these kind of things, and they change their plans. God probably brings things into reality that upset their plans too.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be dogmatic that this is going to happen or that is going to happen. But definitely, there's no way out of an economic meltdown. It's just, I don't see how we can avoid that.
Right.
But it's there are some positive things happening in America too. That are helping stabilize our economy. So it's and in working, getting to know the newer Illuminati leadership, one of the changes from the leadership in the past generation of leaders wanted to eliminate the middle class of America. The present leaders want to preserve the middle class. The middle class serves some very important functions. So I'm glad to see that they recognize the importance of it, but also it's nice to realize that there's going to be a little softening of the genocide, the population control that's on their agenda.
Hold on, Fritz. We'll be right back for final segment. All right, welcome back, everybody, for a final segment. Fritz, before we go forward, I want to give you a chance to give out your website, contact, Facebook information, and then I've got a question I want to ask you to set the premise for this last portion.
Okay. Yes, my website is pentracks.com, pentracks.com. And then there's a new one up that's got a similar name that eventually will supersede the original site, and people can find it. Dolores would be able to. Dolores, are you able to? Okay, she's going to post it into the chat room.
Okay.
It's a new one that we've been putting together, another website. But yeah, pentracks.com is where they can order the books. And so, what's your question?
Okay, well, there's some chatter in the chat room about this as well. But my question is on the strong delusion and how the Vatican, they've been tracking, have been watching for Planet X or the Destroyer, and also how the Ancient Aliens series has been putting forth the premise that humanity was created by the fallen angels, or what the Sumerians call the Anunnaki. And so my thought to you was, in connection with the Antichrist, do you consider or think about the possibility of there being some kind of false alien invasion, or how the powers that be want to apply this into the end times scenario? or what the Bible refers to as the strong delusion?
Let's see how I can break this down. The Illuminati have been in constant contact with intelligences that are non-human. Now, if we use a Christian perspective in the Christian scriptures, they call them fallen angels, they call them demons. If we use a modern terminology, they call them aliens. And there is no doubt in my mind that they anticipate a time period or a point in time when the aliens will be here and we will turn things over to them to run. Now, if you were in the street and if you were to ask a man in the street, would you like demons to run this planet? Of course, everybody's going to go, well, there might be a few nuts that say yes, but by and large, most people are going to say no. But if you went up to somebody and said, would you like an enlightened race of aliens that's 500,000 years more evolved than us to run things? They're going to go, yeah, we're doing a horrible job running this planet. Yeah, bring it on. And so that's the scenario that's going to happen, is the world is going to welcome these aliens, and there will be this alien arrival. The hierarchy's already told me about it, and I don't see how it's going to be opposed by very many people, just because they have skillfully constructed this so that most people, like I just got through saying, are going to be ecstatic that we've got these aliens helping us out. And so yeah, this is in the long run, and our government and many other governments around the world have been involved in creating anti-gravity flying saucers. So our government has this. You know, I was talking about New Mexico and talking about places like Sandia National Lab. And Area 51 people recently transferred, a lot of them, to Sandia National Lab. So that has me wondering, what are they doing now at Sandia that they were doing over at Area 51, you know? And Area 51, as probably people are aware, a few years ago divested itself of its government flying saucers. They moved them to other places. So there's things going on, and just what is that? Now, I'm not, here's where I take issue with a lot of people, and this is an alternate viewpoint, and I know it's not been popular amongst certain groups of people to hear me say this, but I do not believe we are facing a comet or Planet X hitting us. I believe this has been a long-term disinformation campaign to instill fear in people. And there's certain things that are said by people that know that it's going to happen that show that it's a red herring. You know, there's no way of predicting where something like that would hit. There's no way of predicting exactly whether it would hit or go or pass by closely. And so anybody who comes on and says, well, the experts are predicting that it's going to hit in the Caribbean, you know, oh, come on. There's no way of predicting something that accurate. The Earth spins on its axis, right? So a few minutes of spinning is going to make a big difference as to where it hits. And the exact time as to when something was going to hit the Earth is not that predictable. So anyway, there's just a number of things, the people involved, what they're saying, just to me are more evidence of red flags, and that this is like Y2K, where you're going to have a lot of people frightened when they shouldn't be. So that's my take on Planet X, and a lot of the things don't even make scientific sense. And I know people are saying, well, so-and-so astronomer and so-and-so insider said this and this, but I've listened, and I still am convinced this is a long-range disinformation campaign. That doesn't mean that the elite aren't leaving this country. There's plenty of elite building underground structures. There's plenty of the elite that have bought land in other countries and have moved out of the United States. I look at that more as, if you have the money to do it, you're going to try to make things as safe as possible. It's a contingency plan. It doesn't mean that they know exactly that such and such is going to happen at such and such day. It's more of they're taking steps to preserve themselves, and so they're going where they think it's the safest. Of course, the rest of us are just left to our own devices, which, as anybody that's been listening to this program realizes, my encouragement is for us to get right with God, feel, you're stronger and healthier if you feel good about yourself and don't feel guilty. Get right with God, bring him into your life. God is a fortress. He's our strength. He will protect us, but he also expects us to take care of ourselves. You can see the direction things are going. Somebody in the chat room asked about TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is a regulatory investment treaty. And if you look in the past, the trend has been to take treaties, UN treaties, and these other international agencies, world courts, and things like this, and they supersede our Constitution with them. So, this TPP is just a vehicle to take our sovereignty away, and we've been having that happen all along. We've basically, the Constitution is dead. They no longer even pay any attention to it. And when the Supreme Court asks themselves whether something's constitutional or not, they don't even use the Constitution to answer that question anymore. They go to the sayings and words of whoever they want to decide that issue.
Yeah, UN mandate now, all that.
Yeah. So, through treaties and things like this, they've totally taken the power out of the Constitution and its Bill of Rights. Somebody in the chat room, according to Dolores, wanted to know when I thought that World War III would take place. And I have no specific information as to when. In the past, when I had their previous date, they changed it. And if I say a particular date, people just come back on me like, well, you're a false prophet. So
Right.
I don't even like to give dates, but I could say this based on patterns and also based on statements made by people in the Illuminati. This war is going to happen after there's an economic meltdown. And so I would say, like within 5 years, we should be in a bad enough economic place where a war would be the next step in their agenda. So I could conceivably see World War III taking place in 5 years. But again, I'm not making a time prediction. I'm just saying that based on patterns and things that people are saying, that could be a possibility.
Do you think that the conflict between Israel and Iran, and their possibly bombing Iran to stop the nuclear program, that will be a catalyst for World War III?
I think that's too obvious. I think that they will come through and start this through the back door. If you look at World War I and how it got started, nobody would have predicted that happening. It came out from left field where people got blindsided. I think we'll be blindsided again. It might start like between India or Pakistan or one of these places that we don't expect, and then pull us in.
North Korea, South Korea.
Yeah, but even that's kind of so
In
in our face that it's not really going to blindside us. I think it's going to get started like they've done in the past by something happening that we just didn't expect. Like, how did the United States get in a war with Spain? Well, our battleship, the Maine, blew up in Havana Harbor. Now, nobody even knew why it blew up. And now we've discovered that we blew it up.
Right.
But, at the time, nobody even knew how it happened. But that was the pretext for everybody to get upset at Spain, because it was assumed that it was probably blown up by Spain, right. Since we, because everybody's going to assume, well, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do a false flag. That's a little bit like 9/11. Well, our government wouldn't do something like that. Well, unfortunately, they would, and they have many times in the past. But I think they're going to do something that blindsides us, that we don't expect. And then these other things that you're talking about will work their way in. Right. These other bigger issues will be used as setting the stage for, for how United States and Israel get dragged in. Yeah, Iran is that situation there is an accident waiting to happen. But it's also a good example. This may be a little bit off topic, but a lot of people think that all these people in Islamic countries believe in Islam. I know people that are Iranian, and they tell me, yes, when people leave their house, they act like the government, the mullahs want them to. But when they're in their house, these people don't believe in Islam. And you got a scandal over there that there was like billions of dollars that disappeared, and then they blamed it on one guy in the government. He became the scapegoat, but the people don't believe that this one little guy could be responsible for such a big scandal and so much money disappearing, billions of money, billions of dollars. So they have the people over there are not really loyal to their government. Their government's got a bunch of criminals running it in Iran, just like in our country. Right. And unfortunately, that doesn't improve the situation globally for us, because when you have corrupt people like that, they'll drag Iran into a war, because they're secretly playing ball with the big boys. And we've been talking about Russia, China. Russia and China have been building up their military, getting ready for a world war. Uh-huh. And so countries like India and Iran will side with them.
Right. Well, we've got just about 6 minutes remaining, Fritz, and so I want to give you a chance to, anything that you think is important, words of encouragement, anything to address the listening audience.
Well, I'll give a little testimony, and this is just, I went to the Free Your Mind conference in April, and I spoke about health, and at some point that talk that I gave will be available for people to look at for free. My previous Free Your Mind conference talk is available, but the one that I just did is not yet up and available. I think you might be able to see it if you want to pay. But anyway, the previous time that I had gone, I had not taken my swimming suit, and there was no reason this time around in this April to take my swimming suit. I really felt like the Holy Spirit was saying, take your swimsuit. I had no reason, 3D reason to do it, but I did. When I got there, there was a woman who wanted to be baptized, and then it was wonderful to see that God provided some 5 Christian ladies as witnesses, and so there was a very good reason for the Holy Spirit to lead me to take that swimsuit along when I had no visible or visible reason to do something like that. Well, that is an example of how when we line ourselves up with the Holy Spirit and He starts directing our lives, He's going to have us do things that will help us out. And so people are looking for solutions. I don't have the solutions to your problems, people, but God does. And if we turn our lives over to Him, if we're sensitive to the Holy Spirit, that still small voice that is God, He's going to direct us. And we need right now, before all the chaos hits, we need to line ourselves up. We need to give ourselves quiet time where we can reflect and pray, and get in touch with that Holy Spirit, because that's where the answers are going to be. I'm not going to be there holding your hand all the time, and you're going to need the encouragement that God gives you, and that's there. It's available to everybody, and the Holy Spirit can lead your life just like He did the day before I left for that conference, and I felt this burden to take along my swimming suit. So that's my little testimony. God is interested in your life. He loves you, and that's important for people to realize that He cares for them, and He will be a refuge and a strength for them in the coming days of trouble. And He can heal your hearts. He can bind up the wounds and help you forgive things that are in the past so that you can move forward. We need to do that. We need to develop some close friends. I encourage people to have like 2 friends that are on the same wavelength, that they can form a little cell or a clique with, so that you have a little support group there that will take care that you can each take care of each other. So these, I think, are important things, and you're welcome to follow me on Facebook, and I appreciate Zen giving me such an open venue. You just sat back and just let me talk, Zen, And I hope that it's been a blessing for your audience for you to do that. I mean, I know that you could have stepped in and said a lot of things or asked, you know, I know that you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom that you could contribute, and yet you've allowed me to just giving me free reign just to take off and run with things.
Well, we appreciate you, Fritz, and they listen to me enough, so I wanted to give you platform to speak your truth. And we look forward to the next time that you can join us, you and Dolores.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Bye to all your listeners.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks, everybody. God bless. Good night. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.